Hey guys, RVA Returners back once again with the next installment in our Meta Deck Tech series. This time we're talking about an old tried and true, an oldie but a goodie, and that's Mono Water Fusoya. Alright guys, so one of the things about Mono Water Fusoya lists is that they are all pretty streamlined, very clean. And this one we're looking at today is going to have 22 forwards, 10 summons, and 18 backups. Alright guys, we're going to start by taking a look at the forwards, and we're just going to go down the line, and we're going to start with Ephemeral Summoner coming in at 3 copies. Ephemeral Summoner is probably the most important forward in the deck, as it is what enables a lot of the Fusoya tricks to really be efficient and get max value out of them. And Ephemeral being able to be recurred by Lena from the break zone just creates these amazing value turns where you're going to essentially 2-for-1 your opponent almost every time. Next up, we're looking at the other Lena target in the deck, and that's Knight coming in at 2 copies. This is just another great value card because for what you're putting out of it, the 2 CP, you're averaging between a 7 and 9k body, so it can definitely kind of put up the wall when you need to kind of start going wide and building for those Cognos turns. Speaking of, next up is Cognos. He is your finisher. He has always been Mono Water's finisher, and nothing is going to change that. The idea is you're taking advantage of these value packages that you have in the deck, the Lena Ephemeral Summoner, Lena Knight, Layla Viking, just being able to go wide just at any moment and then drop Cognos, use Scholar to bounce it back to your hand, then play another Cognos to go with to initiate that one-sided board wipe, and usually after that you're going to win the game within the next turn or two. Alright, next up we're looking at the newest addition in the deck, and that's Halicarnassus. We're running 2 copies. This card has been just a huge component of Mono Water Fusoya, just kind of getting over some of the matchups it may initially have had trouble with. Just being able to blank everything on your opponent's side when it comes into play just enables you to kind of get around some of those more evasive cards, and you can start getting value out of Fusoya where prior to this card being released you just didn't have an answer for. Next up we're looking at the Opus VII Viking coming in at 3 copies as well. This is just a card that just presents a lot of value over time. You're going to draw a card when it comes in, you're going to draw a card when it takes a hike. No matter how it goes, be it the break zone, or if it gets removed from the game by a Shantota, or it gets bounced back to your hand by something. So this card is just a card advantage engine, and the next card we're going to look at just kind of enables that more. And of course that card is Layla. Layla has been a huge part of Mono Water decks, or just decks that run water in general, since she was released in Opus VI, and just being able to just repeat that value out of Vikings just always ensures that you're going to have a full tank of gas in your hand, and again enables a lot of those Cognos plays by being able to go wide and keep the card advantage in your hand. One of the last forwards we're going to look at is probably one of the best legendaries, if not the best legendary that Water has seen, and that's Cloud of Darkness. This is another card that really takes advantage of these kind of go wide value turns where you can, if you don't have access to the Cognos, or you're just really looking to get one threat out of the way, just being able to drop Cloud of Darkness, reduce the power on something by 8 to 10k. Sometimes that's enough just to push through and win the game on that turn. And lastly, we're going to look at Lena. She, very similar to Layla in the vein that just gets that free body on the board and allows you to really start having these value turns. Layla into Ephemeral Summoner on a Fusoya, with a Fusoya on the board, is such a huge swing, because being able to pretty much remove one of their forwards and you're netting 2 forwards on the board, it doesn't really get much better than that. And having her S ability to bring a Cloud of Darkness out of the break zone is absolutely brutal sometimes as well. Alright, so moving down to the summon line, we have 10 summons in the deck, all of them EX bursts, and all of them serving a different purpose. We'll start with Poo Poo. Poo Poo's primary purpose is to kind of ungum your hand with extra copies of cards that you don't need, and being able to, again, refill the gas tank so you can keep going. And being able to play this off of an Ephemeral, off of a Fusoya, to potentially take care of an opponent's forward, and then get rid of... You're just, once again, sculpting your hand the way you want it while removing threats from across the board. Next up we have Fanfare the Darkening Cloud. We are running a full play set of this in the deck. Again, a great card in conjunction with some of these value turns that the deck has. Being able to play Layla Viking, have a Fanfare set up, sacrifice the Viking to draw the card off the Fanfare, and usually your opponent is going to lose something a little more valuable. The same thing can also be said if you play the Ephemeral Summoner, put the Fanfare on top of your deck, activate Fusoya, kill something on their side, flip the Fanfare, sacrifice the Ephemeral Summoner because her job's done at that point, and then now you've 2-for-1 your opponent, and you're still in a great place at that point. Next up, we have Coo Cullen the Impure. This is a great one because A, it draws you a card, and it's going to help you get rid of some of those bigger bodies that, Fusoya just can't handle on its own. So being able to play a Fusoya, or hit them with Fusoya, and then flip the Coo Cullen on the EX burst, chances are you're going to take out that 8, 9k, 10k body that's sitting across the board that you're trying to get around without having to party attack and sacrifice a forward. And then lastly, we're looking at the Opus VII Leviathan. What's great about this card is you're really catering it to be played off the top for that burst. And like all the other summons in the deck, this can be searched for with Ephemeral Summoner. So using Ephemeral Summoner to put this on top, you're going to use Fusoya, you're going to flip this guy, you're going to be able to draw a card off of it because you flipped it on a burst, and then you're going to bounce something that's probably in the way back to your opponent's hand. So all of these summons create value, and they can all be searched off of Ephemeral, and they all just create amazing, efficient Fusoya turns. All right, guys, and lastly, we're going to take a look at backups. Mono Water is another one of those decks that has a very clean, efficient backup line, but they also allow room for a tech slot or a tech card here or there. And we're just going to go down the line. We're going to start with Artemisia. Artemisia is a great card you want to see really at any point in the game, because in the early game it essentially acts as a second mulligan. Being able to get the pieces you want early to start setting up, or in the late game being able to filter out the extra copies of cards you don't want to see currently, like your extra Yunas, your extra Bronze, your extra Wakas, things that normally you're going to start pitching for CP. Now you can start getting cards you actually can play and want to start pressuring the board with. Next up we have Scholar. Scholar is a super efficient, very versatile backup in this deck. Obviously, it's key for the Cognos board wipes. It's a great protection piece, being able to bounce cards back to your hand if they get targeted by spot removal, or it's a great way to reuse enter the battlefield triggers in a pinch, being able to bounce a Lena back to your hand, play her again, get another 2-drop, or bounce Layla, get another Viking, or even bounce the Viking back to your hand to draw the card. So you've got options with that. Next up is probably the second most important backup in the deck, and that's Yuna. Reducing the cost of your summons is super, super important. The fact that Fanfare's going to cost 2, Coo Cullen and Leviathan are going to cost 3, especially when you have to hard cast these from your hand. That reduction just makes your turns that much more efficient. And over time, you'll start seeing that CP value kind of come into play. Next up, we have Braun. Braun's great, gets your Vikings and your Knights out of your deck and gets them into your hand. And this is another one of those cards that, if you don't have the summon set up on the top when you go for the Fusoya, if you flip a Braun, you don't feel bad at all because you still get to get a card out of your deck and, kind of keep your advantage going. All right, next up we have the namesake in the deck, and that is Fusoya. We're running 2 copies here. Some decks run 3. We're only running 2 because this deck does draw a lot of cards, and the odds of you seeing it are very, very high. And since it is a light card, it does have the potential to gum up your hand. So being able to having 2 in the deck means you will see it. And again, it's going to this is the card that is going to allow you to win the games off of its. You're going to take out a forward with its ability. You're going to flip your EX burst after you take the damage from it, and you're probably going to take out something else. You're just going to turn your guys sideways and shake their hand and say, "Good game, thanks for playing." All right, next up is another one of those tech spots I was talking about, and that's Minwu. Minwu's a card you kind of want to see in certain matchups, obviously. With Dodaluma being, a thing, Cactar being a thing, Alcid being a thing, being able to drop Minwu and stop all that pingy damage can sometimes just shut down complete strategies. Minwu's great against fire decks, little pingy decks like Wind Lightning. So it's a card that while you don't really need to run the full 2 or 3 copies, having one and just seeing it in the right matchup can be just a blowout. All right, next up we have Waka. Waka is a huge part of mono water decks, as are most anthems to any monocolor deck. Being able to have your guys just that 1k higher is huge. If you've got 5 backups, it turns your knight into a 9k. Cloud of Darkness being a 9k is huge. Your 7ks being 8ks are huge because of the Fusoya implications. So Waka, that's one you want to see in every single matchup. And then lastly, we have Merleweb. Merleweb's great just for searching out the forward you need at any given time. If you flip a Brawn on a burst and you have Merleweb sitting there, go search yourself, a Layla. Now you can pitch the Viking, play Layla, get Viking back. So now you've kind of set up more of these turns. Or if you're about ready to pull the trigger on the Cognazo, use Merleweb, search for Cognazo. Again, really whatever you need at any given time. That's kind of what this deck is all about just in general. It's really playing kind of reactive to what your opponent's doing and setting them back, meanwhile, pressing your advantage. And guys, that is Mono Water Fusoya. And just real quick, before we finish up, I do want to say that there is some variations in the list, kind of all across the board. As far as forwards go, you'll see some lists that run Legendary Steiner from Opus 4. You'll see some that run Beatrix. You'll see some that run Porum. You'll see some that run Fame Mimic Go-Go. Now, as far as summons go, you'll see differences in the Leviathans. Some run Poo-Poo, some do not. As far as backups go, you'll see some that want to run, more copies of Minwu. They'll want to run the full 3 copies of Fusoya. So it really, you can kind of tailor the deck to the local meta, but at the end of the day, the deck is still a powerhouse and is still a player in the current meta. So if you're sitting across from Mono Water Fusoya, or you take it to an event, just be prepared. The deck does play the long game. It can get a little grindy, but just knowing how to efficiently use your CP and knowing when to Fusoya is what's really going to put you over the top. So as always, thanks for watching. Any comments, any suggestions that you have there, if you play the deck very differently or if you use different tech choices, let us know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.